I started this video as a tribute to Paula, my sister, and to one of her older songs, which I really liked. I created the main character, remembering my long journey through art schools and the formative experiences that many of us go through. I also needed his little nemesis, the type of a girl whom I had often encountered throughout all these years. I had drawn a unicorn on her shirt at first, just for a splash of color. Then I randomly changed it to a rainbow, but in the end, I remade the scenes without any color. It could be interpreted, and I wasn't in the mood for meaningless discussions over a trivial detail. The story begins at the seashore, where the boy starts building sand castles, beginning to be challenged by the other children, more playful, more united, more focused on themselves and observing the world around them. In fact, I thought it wasn't only about the type of the solitary artist, but also about the way isolated children can sometimes find, through art, their unique way of becoming social again and reintegrating into the world. I also created a female character who could embody multiple symbols: an alter ego, an anima, and a human type with genetic endowment, extremely different from that of the main character. A sign that the artist is, after all, also driven and motivated by instinct. Although art helps him understand himself better, he operates in a reality too complex to completely challenge or confront. As I often do, I built the narrative on a classic myth, the story of Pygmalion, the Greek sculptor from antiquity, who, disappointed by the women around him, sculpted a beautiful wife from white ivory, whom he then fell in love with, and whom the goddess Venus, at his request, brought to life, giving her to him as a wife. Of course, this millennia-old myth shows us that the status and struggles of an artist devoted to his work, as well as his complex transformation through art, were well known to the ancient Greeks, likely along with many other characteristics of the human psyche and the passage of humans through the universe. In my story, I chose the muse of music, Erato, as a symbol of the idealized woman who inspired me from the earliest age, through an inexplicable calling for music, especially electronic music. I really liked the way AI transformed the image of the Greek statue of the muse into a feminine beauty that I admired from the very first second in which it turned my prompt into an image. I only asked it to dress her in clothes inspired by 70s fashion. Being born in 1977, I keep vibrant memories of those years, from which I sometimes draw inspiration and creative energy. The muse also symbolizes the presence of my old imaginary friends, who have accompanied me since childhood during my most difficult moments. In the end, the muse elevates the child beyond the earthly atmosphere into cosmic space, to help him detach by stepping out of context from which all the problems of human existence seem insignificant. The video generation went almost flawlessly, a task that would have taken months for an entire team of animators done in 3 days. I kept thinking about what the future of animation and artists might be. But I answered myself that Obviously, without a well-thought-out story, without the experience and human touch of a creator, the very concept of art, as we know it today, loses its meaning. If, in the future, AI helps us surpass this stage of our evolution, and if art or creativity takes on new forms or disappears entirely, we probably cannot foresee it now. I edited the video again in DaVinci Resolve, trying to follow the flow of the remake of the song I Pick Up Dreams by Paula, which I had composed a few days earlier, based solely on the a cappella. I applied only a film look, giving a slight retro touch to the image, and desaturated it a little to give it a vintage feel and soften the color intensity. I had received the song's a cappella from my sister Paula a few days earlier. I used 2 AI-based plugins to remove any unpleasant frequencies. Soothe and Gullfoss are already increasingly present in many of my tracks. The harmonic bass is different from the original, more colorful, slightly jazzy, supported by a vintage electric piano, Mark I classic from Native Instruments. I also used 2 types of acoustic guitar, starting with one played with fingertip picking, and ending towards the final part, with a folk-inspired guitar played more casually and relaxed. For the rhythm section, I chose multiple variations of a semi-acoustic drum loop, a successful blend of electronic and analog sounds from a Loopmaster sample pack. For a slightly unusual touch, I added parts of the composition with valves, one of my favorite Native Instruments plugins. I also used a string quartet and an electronic harp from Synth Anthology, the Retro Collection by Uvi. The electronic guitar solo was played with Evolution Infinity. I added subtle percussion elements with Session Percussionist for a bit of groove, and the bass line used an acoustic emulation in Trillion by Spectrasonics. I lightly saturated with instances of 3 dedicated plugins from my collection: Oxide Tape Recorder from UAD, Omega N from Kush Audio, and True Iron from Kazrog. I lightly compressed in multiband mode with Pro MB from FabFilter and limited with Pro L. This was the creation process of the remix and video for the song I Pick Up Dreams, written by Paula, my sister, almost 20 years ago.